Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
And hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Christian Renteria, and it is the end of spooky season. So you know what that means? That's right. It's time to run down the horror and horror adjacent. Can't forget about those movies I've seen this year. It is the horror rundown. I've been doing this for, I think, the last couple years now. I think this is the third year in a row that I've been doing this this kind of episode, and I've really liked it. So I wanted to keep going. And I think we all have collectively agreed that I think it could probably be from 2002, maybe 2003, to now. Horror has been really, really damn good. Like there obviously have been some stinkers, and we'll talk about some of those here, and downright bad movies. But for the most part, horror is back in true form. A studio horror movie at that, not just independent stuff. Like studio horror movies are actually good again for the first time in a long time, and a lot of those directors. We are from, some of them released movies last year, a couple of years ago, and they're back this year with some more, and we'll obviously be talking about those movies. And, I don't think it's too far out there to agree with the claims that have been coming out that this year and a couple of years, these last few years of horror are kind of reminiscent of the 80s, where, obviously horror was at its highest and the horror boom. So I would agree to that. To a lot of the extent, obviously, horror has changed a little bit throughout the years. But we'll that's for you guys to agree or disagree on. But before we get into this year, let's just give a reminder of what the big horror movies were last year and how this year stacks up to obviously the year before. The majority of these that I have written down are theater releases. There are a few streamers on here that I mainly that I saw, basically. But if I missed anything big that came out last year, I apologize on that. So these were some of the big horror movies that came out last year, or horror adjacent movies. I haven't updated this because I Saw the TV Glow, and I don't think I Saw the TV Glow is necessarily horror, or maybe even horror adjacent. Maybe some parts of it are very horror adjacent, but that's for you to disagree or agree. On that. Terrifier 3, Night Swim, ISS, Imaginary Terror, Under Paris, Lisa Frankenstein, The Exorcism, The Watchers, In a Violent Nature, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. That's where horror adjacent comes in. So is this next one. Beetlejuice, Azrael, Immaculate, Trap, Afraid, The Strangers Chapter 1, Hellboy the Crooked Man, Salem's Lot, Strange Darling, Blink Twice, Cuckoo, Maxine, Speak No Evil, Smile 2, It's What's Inside, Mads, Longlegs, The Substance, Late Night with the Devil, Infested, Abigail, The First Omen, A Quiet Place Day 1, and Alien Romulus. That is the big horror movies that came out last year. That is a list. That is quite a list. And again, this year's movies were, in my opinion, of course, this is my podcast, kind of like last year as well. It was a little slow at the beginning. It was a rough outing for a lot of these movies that we're about to talk about. But as it progressed, it got stronger and very stronger. And there was this very middle ground in the release schedule where even before we get to October, where a lot of horror movies are going to start coming out, or have come out rather, they just got stronger. They were strong, very strong. And obviously, if you want to talk, I don't know how many times I can say obviously. One, if you can probably think about without even, me having to name it. Okay, there are some horror movies this year that came out that I have not watched. In addition to those movies, I want to point out these movies because I don't have too much to say about them. I don't want to call them honorable mentions or dishonorable mentions or anything like that. I'll save that for the end of the year list. And this isn't necessarily to say that I'm not a fan of these movies, but these are just movies, again, I just don't have that much to say too much about them. There are a couple on here that I didn't enjoy, or I wanted to enjoy more, and you'll obviously know those movies when I get to them. So let's get to this. Let's call this the cutting room floor, shall we? Let's keep it movie related. So the first movie is Wolfman. This one obviously came out very early in the year. I was really excited for Wolfman for a multitude of reasons. And while I'm not going to call the movie a disappointment like a lot of others have, I'm not gonna, disagree with them if that's how they viewed it. I mean, I was probably just a slightly disappointed, but I'm not gonna call them a whole movie as a whole disappointed. It did leave a little bit to be desired from my end. I did like that Leigh Whannell, who had already done, of course, his version, the take of The Invisible Man, is here. He's back, and he did his own take of the story, a modern version, as modern as you can get it, to still try to call this a Wolfman. If he wanted to do this movie and just didn't call it Wolfman, it probably would have worked as well. It probably would have worked better if it didn't call it the Wolfman. I think the fact that we have this connection to the Wolfman, I think that's probably what did it in. The design was a major talking point, obviously. But again, given his new take, I thought it kind of sort of made sense to what they were doing. Again, not necessarily really a Wolfman, but we'll move past that little talking point. It didn't fully work for me. There were things I liked about it. I liked the wolf vision that we get a little bit in the movie, which I thought was cool. But like I said, I wouldn't call it I wouldn't call this movie entirely a disappointment, but it is right there. It is very much on the line. But I did like that Whannell took the chance on his own take, and that says a lot, especially for these kind of movies, the Universal monster movies that have a very huge fan base, and they are, I would say, a cornerstone of filmmaking and a cornerstone of Hollywood. I being one of those people. So let's move on. Talk about the next movie. By the way, a little slight spoiler warning for some of these. I'll try to give you a heads up on the spoiler talk, but just bear in mind, some of these, especially the older movies, the older movies that came out this year. I'll probably be talking a little bit spoiler wise on that end. But anyway, the next movie, Hell of a Summer. This premiered at some film festivals years ago. It finally got the light of day thanks to Neon. Obviously, Neon putting in the work this year and the last couple of years, especially in the horror realm. Stranger Things star Finn Wolfhard and Billy Burke, I think that's how you pronounce his last name. I apologize if it isn't. Wrote and directed the movie, which also they also both starred in the movie, and you can tell they like the horror genre, especially the summer camp subgenre, if that's what you want to call it. The problem was it wasn't all that great of a movie, which on one hand I don't blame them, because at the time they were still pretty, much younger. And this was the first movie they directed, so it's a first timers. It's also kind of a isolated movie, so their budget wasn't probably that big overall either. The movie just lacks a certain punch to everything it really kind of wants to do. The humor is okay. A lot of the jokes work. A lot of them don't. A lot of them just fall completely flat, which at times does kill the scene a little bit, at least for me. The killer reveal and their motivations are just kind of, just meh. They're really flat. Nothing that we haven't necessarily seen before, but it would have worked if the characters were a little better. I think they're a little bit more well written and we got to spend a little bit more time with them. I think it would have worked. I wanted to like this more. I really did, because I actually kind of enjoyed the trailer that they came out. I feel like if this came out maybe years before, I feel like if this movie came out during COVID, when we were all kind of, locked away in our house, and it came out like on a stream, like on Shudder or something, or on, VOD, I think this movie would have killed. I think this movie would have been really good during the COVID era. Now, I think because we've seen so much, and we've seen movies like this, with this kind of concept, the summer camp subgenre, as I called it, I think there's better movies out there for it. So, no offense. Obviously, I liked some of it. I just wanted to like it more than I did. The next movie is Drop. What's worse than a first date after putting yourself out there after a long, traumatic time in your life? How about someone airdropping you weird memes that not only threaten your life and your child's, but then telling you to kill your date? That is the basic gist of Drop. Christopher Landon, who did Freaky and the Happy Death Day movies, directed this, and he was able to keep it going. Keep it going for the most part. I think a lot of that is due to our two leads, and Megan Fahey, who plays Violet, and Henry, played by Brandon Skynar. I think it's like pronounced the last name. I apologize if it isn't. Because it's really just following them two until it doesn't. Until we, bring some more characters in to the movie. The one thing I did really like about this movie, for some reason, was the text message effect. We see Violet's text messages on screen like we saw in the trailer. That is how it is in the movie. And this is just one moment where Henry walks through them, but the message stays on screen for a little bit after he does it. It's a small thing. I don't know what it was. It was a small thing that made me very happy. I don't know why. It just did. And he also makes like the little like sound like when he walks through. I don't know. I'm a little nerdy about that kind of stuff, but it was very good. I enjoyed Drop. While watching it, I don't know if I'd revisit it as much as the other movies on this list, even other Blumhouse movies, for that matter. But I did enjoy Drop for what it was. It's a nice little solid thriller, and yeah, I would say it's not really. This is more of a horror adjacent thing. It's probably more of a thriller than a horror movie, but I wanted to put it on here anyway. The next movie, Until Dawn. I'm going to go off a bit on this one. I have never actually played the video game this is based on. I do know the story, and I've seen playthroughs of it, so I'm familiar with the idea and the world and the story. I think one of the smart things the producers and director David F. Sandberg, who did Lights Out and Annabelle Creations, he also directed both Shazam movies. I think what they did before the movie came out was when they started promoting the movie, was saying this was not a direct adaptation of the game. Now, of course, that is a double-edged sword. That can be like, okay, people who never play the game can go in and not, expect just Easter egg heavy references. But also, it's going to piss off the fans of the game, because if they want to see a direct adaptation, even though the game plays out like a movie, you can find a playthrough online and it can be like watching a long movie. There's different choices in the game. Like the game is very like option heavy, where you get to decide kind of how the story plays out and how you decide on your decision making that decides the ending of the game for you. So there's multiple different endings to the game. But anyway, I thought it was a good idea for them to do it. But I also see why people were mad about that. It saves them some criticisms, but again, they also have to deal with the unfortunate criticism of why didn't you just, again, adapt the actual game. So I like the approach that they did their own thing. I always do. That's always something that I'm going to, hearken on and champion for. If you're going to adapt something, adapt it, and you want to change it, make it your own thing, but keep, the style, and not the style, but I guess the style, but keep the heart of what it was intact. And again, never actually having played the game, just seeing playthroughs, I think they kind of did that a little bit. Not really, sort of. Again, this also might have suffered from just call that something else instead of, a very well-known IP title. So all that said, I enjoyed it. I think I enjoy the concept more than the actual movie, because basically this is Labor Day, the horror movie. A more serious version, unlike, Happy Death Day, which is a little bit more comedical. This is very much more drama and trauma horror movie wise. The movie itself, which is what I'm basing on. I'm not basing it on the video game. I'm basing it completely on the movie. There are things I liked about the movie, like some of the really gnarly deaths that they come up with. And one particular set stands out. And I really like that Sandberg and his team did a lot, if not all, practical effects, which is nice and welcoming, because they could have easily CGI'd this thing up. And I think for a little bit they did, but for the most part, you can tell that a lot of this was practical. And sometimes it looks cheap. I will admit, sometimes there are like certain angles where you're like, but a lot of it is, I think the fact that they went practical, I think needs to be, applauded that they did that. The story itself is fine. We get the friends that are trying to get closure for Clover, our main character, whose sister has gone missing, and they end up in a place that she did, which unfortunately for them puts them in a vicious loop where they get killed off and are hunted down, and they must find a way to survive until, yes, you guessed it, until dawn. Some of the dialogue feels very wooden, and I don't know if that's just the script. I don't think it was the actors, because I've seen some of these people before, and I've seen them in much better roles. But I think maybe it just, sometimes just it comes off as very wooden. You have, like I mentioned, Clover, our main character, dealing with a lot. We have Max, which is Clover's ex, who obviously still has feelings for her throughout the movie. But it doesn't quite at first, he doesn't quite at first get the idea that, they need to move on from this, and why they're even going on the trip in the first place, which is probably why they broke up. And I think a character even says that. Nina, who just wants her friend back. It's funny enough, if you watch the trailers, you would think that she is the character that we're following. She's not. If you go back and watch the trailer, she is the character that we follow mainly in there. We have Megan, who is the spiritual one, who played by, I didn't put any of the actors' names on here, and I apologize for that. But Megan, the actress who plays her, she voiced one of the characters in K-pop Demon Hunters, which I found out about, and I was like, oh, I respect you more now. Which I didn't know, and I thought that was actually kind of cool. Once, I found it afterwards. You have Abe, who is Nina's current boyfriend and the odd one out of the group, because everyone has been childhood friends, and Abe, who is probably the closest to maybe what someone would act like in this situation, is kind of a terrible character. Like, when you watch a horror movie and you want someone to die, it's Abe. Abe sucks. Again, they try to, make it seem like he is the odd one out, and he's probably the most rational one of the group. He is the character that we all think we are in a horror movie situation, but the way that he's written, it just makes him a dick. It really does. There's a moment when Abe and Nina are alone, and Abe's been stabbed at this point, and they're being hunted down by different kind of killers. So you get a new horror movie, every reset. So one of the killers has stabbed him at this point, and Nina and Abe are alone. And this is after Abe has shown that he's kind of, a shitty character. And the group realizes that they have to die at this point. They realize they have to die to reset the night. So the killer stops in front of him, and Nina just looks at the killer, and she's like, him first. And I think you felt that. I think that's one of the most cathartic things in the movie, and also one of the funniest, because he is just a terrible character. I think if you're looking for something to watch around this time of year, around Halloween time, obviously, or if you want to, obviously do it again next year, or you want to keep, spooky season going to November, this is the kind of thing you want to watch. Sometimes to make fun at, but it's just also out of curiosity. I would say watch it. It's not like the games. If you played the games, it is not like the games. Coming from someone who's only watched the playthroughs. There are moments from the games in it. Like we have a character standing very still when our monster is very nearby them. There are two huge references to the game at the very end of the movie. And that will be, that was probably their indication. It's like, okay, let's do this first, and then let's actually adapt the game in the second one. If we were able to do a sequel, I don't think they're going to be able to do a sequel, but you never know today in Hollywood. I didn't hate it. I just thought I would, because no one was talking about this when it came out, and I saw it on its second week in theaters, and it was just my brother. It was my brother, me, and I think like another couple that were like sitting far down from us, and maybe one other guy. So that was it. So it's kind of a date movie if your date likes horror movies, but okay. The next movie you want to talk about is another one that I wanted to like more than I did. Fear Street Prom Queen. The newest installment to the Fear Street movies, Prom Queen. It was okay. Like I mentioned, I really wanted to enjoy this more. I really enjoy the last three movies they did. And I thought Netflix continuing the series as different installments, from the books by R.L. Stine, was a really smart play and could be done right and cool again if these movies all turn out consistently good, or at the very least decent. And Prom King on paper had the right idea, but it stumbled on its execution. It was released around prom season, which was nice. It was set during the 80s, which everyone likes. 80s are so hot right now. And it already had a built-in audience from the past movies and from the book. It just didn't have enough of a real kind of punch for me. Some great kills, which then get lessened because some people just die by just getting stabbed, which out of context doesn't sound great. But the overall story feels like we've seen this before. We have seen this concept before. Now, obviously, it's not a terribly original idea. It's a book that was written in the 80s. I mean, we've probably had this idea, we've seen this idea many times. The reveal of who's killing. For those who don't know, it's set in prom season. It's these group of girls, and they're getting killed off because they're all nominees for prom queen. So the reveal of who the killer is was okay. It kind of made sense to the story, and I was like, okay, that makes more sense than some other reveals that happened this year in horror movies. But it just kind of the way it plays out is just but I don't know. I guess I wanted more from the movie. It's nothing against the cast, because the cast is fine. Some of the writing is supposed to feel the way it is because it is in the 80s, but I don't know. I wasn't feeling it as much as I wanted to. I would recommend it, especially if you watch the other ones, but just don't get your hopes too high on this one. I know what you did last summer, so I didn't like this movie. I didn't. I didn't expect anything from this because I don't hold the original and first movie to that high regard. I did rewatch the first one before this, and it was fine for what it was. Trying to put myself back in that 90s mindset a little bit, if you will. My opinion didn't really change, other than realizing the first one loses a lot of steam at multiple points, and the second movie is just terrible. I think we all agree on that. Also a little boring. But let's talk about this new one. This new one that came out. The cast is fine. They're doing the best with the material that they're given. The characters are okay. The movie is leaning very much more toward the modern audiences with the slang and everything, which didn't bother me. But what bothered me was the random moments of, oh, there's a killer after us. Kind of moments. Get a little spoiler on this one, so just FYI. Bringing back Jennifer Love Hewitt, Freddie Prinze Jr. was okay. They're very much supporting characters until they're not. And that's the part that doesn't work for me, because the reveal of who the killer is and why, it could have worked. It could have worked. It really could have. But if they worked on it a little bit more. But the reveals and the reasoning just feel so lazy and just outright dumb. And outright, again, like I mentioned, outright spoilers for this. So if you haven't watched it, just want to skip forward a little bit. Making Freddie Prinze Jr. one of the killers could have worked. Again, it could have, but it didn't. He recruited Stevie because he didn't want the town to forget about what originally happened, which, by the way, when the podcast girl, Tyler, dies, she says, you. Why? Why put that in there? Because that's just telling if you're smart enough and you're wondering about this stuff, you're going to just assume that one of the killers, or that the killer is either Jennifer Love Hewitt or Freddie Prinze Jr. Because who else does she know in that town? There's no one else alive from those movies except them. And Brandy, her character. That's it. And why would they randomly bring back Brandy for, they bring her back, but we'll get to that in a minute. But why? Why would that basically confirms it's someone that she knows, and she doesn't know anybody in the town other than Chase Sue Wonder's character, Ava, and John Howard King's character, Milo. And then when Milo dies, you're like, is it? It's not. Is it Ava? No, it's not Ava, because she was attacked at the same time. So rewatchability at that point goes out the window, But the thing that did me in was the final scene, not the mid-credit scene, which again, the Brandy scene, we'll talk about that. It's the final scene between Ava and Madeline Klein's Danica, which somehow survives. Getting, fish hooked in the chest and diving in the water and being thrown into the water. Okay, whatever. But they act very nonchalant about everything that has happened to them. Their close friends are dead. They know that Stevie's still out there, probably wanting to finish the job, but they act just so whatever about it. They act so, like, unbothered by it. Like, you've been traumatized. At least I still know what you did last summer. Gave, Julie some PTSD. They don't have that in here at all. Like, yeah, I mean, maybe the next one will give them PTSD, but then that just negates the whole ending of the last movie, because they're very like, oh, whatever, let's just laugh about it. And then to end it on a therapy dig, like, that's just so, like, that's just so lazy. Yeah, so, and then there's the mid-credit scene. Like, I keep mentioning it, Brandy, her character, Carla. They're basically setting up a potential sequel, which I don't know how I feel about. I mean, on one regard, like, it's me. I'm gonna go watch it, because I go watch movies. That's what I do. I don't get paid to. I go watch movies because I like watching movies. And I like even watching some bad ones, because, you gotta watch a bad one every now and then. If this movie was just even a little bit better, I would have been okay with that. Do we need a sequel? No. Will it get a sequel? They haven't announced it yet, at least from what I can remember. So we'll see. I don't know. And don't get me started on that dream sequence. That dream sequence makes absolutely no sense. It was just a way to bring back Sarah Michelle Gellar. That's it. That's all it was. It was just, we had to bring her back. And not in picture form, not by naming her character. We had to bring her back. And, like, I get it. Obviously. Sarah Michelle Gellar, phenomenal. Amazing. Anytime you get to see her anywhere, awesome. But to bring her back for that scene where she has no connection to anybody other than Madeline Klein's character being, the queen of the parade, like Helen was, it just makes no sense. It's so dumb. It's I hate it. I hated it. I really did. I hated it. Okay. That's enough of that. So the next movie I'm going to talk about is Him. And I don't think this classifies as a full horror, but definitely horror adjacent. And maybe some of that applies to the Jordan Peele effect. He did produce it. He didn't direct it. He was just a producer on it. But when Him works, it does work pretty well. Visually, the movie is pretty great. The problems, I should say, not just problem. The problems start when we get to the second half and you try to start explaining everything. It's not necessarily something that we've never seen before in other movies, the explanation, but it just didn't come together well enough to really justify the ending this movie thinks it's earned or deserved. I think Tyreek Withers does it well enough for what he's given. I do think his character's reaction at some of the things going on are rather tame. Because I think if half of the things that happen to him and that he experiences and sees happen to anybody else, I would not be as calm as he was. I'll just say that. But and Marlon Wayans, obviously, I think very, very good here as well. I think the balancing act of his character, which is a veteran, a football house. This movie's about football. Or one of the things about the movie is it's about football, and he plays this veteran football player, who's pretty much at the end of his career, and Tyreek Withers' character is the newcomer. He's going to be he is the heir apparent in a lot of ways. So I think the balancing act that Wayans does in this movie is okay. Like the switches between him being, maybe just eccentric to downright probably terrifying, in any other case, in any other situation. It's it just that switch is very thin, and I think when it works, it's good, but when it doesn't, and it's just trying to think it's trying to be smart, that's just when it just doesn't work at all. So I think one of the problems with him, besides the ending, which admittedly will be hit or miss for some people, And the reactions I've seen so far is some of it has been a bit on the miss side. One of the problems that I think that I have about the movie, and I actually heard this from someone else, but I completely agree with it because I think they were right, was that it pushes its tone onto us a little too fast. It doesn't build up to the horror or to the creepiness, to the mystery of what it's trying to do. It just does it right away within the first kind of 5-10 minutes of the movie, and then it goes away until it comes back. And I think if they had built up to it, I think it would have been better. I don't know if it would have made the ending justified, but I think going to that point right away, and then losing it and then becoming a regular movie again, I think that kind of just, I don't know, I just think that it didn't balance it well enough for what I think the movie was trying to accomplish. The movie itself is fine. It's not a bad movie. I don't want to even say it becomes a bad movie, near the final act, but I think the balancing of this movie is really off for me. The Conjuring Last Rites is the next movie I want to talk about. The last outing of the main Conjuring movies and the last outing for Ed and Lorraine Warren, for Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. Last Rites was a solid enough last movie to go out on. This felt like a proper goodbye for them, and the main series of the Conjuring movies are done. Spin-offs not included, obviously. But this ending it felt very heartfelt. It felt like a nice kind of, again, bow tie to the bow tie. A nice ribbon, I guess, to the, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. It was nice. It was a nice way to end the series. Obviously knowing how Ed and Lorraine's, final years were, that was, the way they ended in the movie was well worth it. The movie itself, in terms of scares and story-wise, was okay. It was better than The Devil Made Me Do It, which was the last one. So if you had any fears on that, that can just be washed away right now. It was better than the last outing. But I will say, I think, I don't know if I said this on social media, but I know I said it to some people. I think, the Conjuring movies, they're just missing the James Wan juice. Like after he left, after part 2, they just haven't really been the same. And that's not a diss toward Michael Chavez. Michael Chavez, kind of the heir apparent to James Wan. He's, done a lot of these, Conjuring inverse movies, La Llorona, The Curse of La Llorona, which is not officially a part of the Conjuring series, but it is adjacent to it. But he also did The Nun 2, and he did, of course, The Devil Made Me Do It. But they just hit very different when Wan directs as opposed to someone else. And again, that's not a diss toward Michael Chavez, because I think he, I think in terms of scares, he can put a scene together, but I think everything else just, I don't know, it just didn't hit. This movie is a slow burn. I just want to mention that. It is a very slow burn movie. It's also, I think, also the longest movie in the Conjuring series, including the spin-offs. So it is a bit of a slow burn. But when the Warrens finally get to the haunted house, like the last 40-ish minutes of the movie, that's really when the movie turns up. And I think, and again, it's a fine movie. Is it, as good as the first movie? I know a lot of people don't like the second movie. It's been a while, admittedly, since I watched the second movie, but no, it's not. But I think in terms of what this franchise has done so far, the main series, I think this is, again, a proper way to send them out. All right, so the next movie we're talking about, Strangers Chapter 2. And right out of the bat, I'm just going to say, actually, I'm going to hold on to that thought. Let me hold on to that thought. I do want to say, though, the other thing I want to say, is I really liked the first Strangers that came out. The 2008 version. Not Strangers Chapter 1. I did not like that movie at all. But the Strangers 2008, I really did like. I thought it was creepy. I thought it was, and still think, it is a very effective horror movie and thriller. And the fact that it's just 3 normal people in that chilling line because you were home, it just makes the movie so effective. After watching everything, and then in the end. So, and then the sequel came out, rather, and I'm probably one of the handful of people that genuinely enjoy Prey at Night. And I was cautiously looking forward, not even optimistic. I was just cautiously looking forward to this new trilogy when it was first announced. And then the first movie came out, and I did not like it whatsoever. I admire that it was trying, and I put strong emphasis on trying, because a lot of the movie is a redo of that 2008 movie, but they do at least try to do some new things in that movie, but I just wasn't feeling it. It just wasn't the same. So my excitement and expectations for this new trilogy dramatically went down after I watched chapter 1, but me being me, I couldn't help myself and went to go watch chapter 2. I saw it a couple weeks after it had been released, just because of timing of everything when it was coming out. But in that, I had heard nothing but negative things about the movie, saying it was worse than the first one, saying if you were holding out hope for the second one, you should probably stop. And then I saw it, and yeah, it's not good. It is not a good movie. And for whatever reason, seriously, for whatever reason, after I walked out of the movie, this idea, or this video rather, popped in my head. And it's a really old video. And it's a video of this comedian / movie lover. I even forget what the video was for, or who it was for. And he was talking about not going to watch the new Twilight movie, which was the second one. Again, this is telling you how old this video is. So he was talking about not going to go see the second Twilight movie because he saw the first one and he didn't like it. Granted, he was an older guy, so it wasn't targeted toward him, which he admits in the video, but still, he said it. And there was this phrase that he said, and it has stuck with me ever since I watched that video. And I use it very rarely when I talk about movies. I don't think I've ever used it talking about it here on the podcast. But that phrase stuck with me, and for whatever reason, that phrase went into my head after watching Strangers Chapter 2. And that is that this movie sucked donkey dick. And it just, the more I think about Strangers Chapter 2, the more I get mad, the more I wonder, am I going to take the hit? Am I going to go watch Chapter 3? I probably am going to go watch Chapter 3. But will I be excited about it? No, I will not. And you guys know, anyone who's listened to this podcast enough times, or has listened to it even sparingly, will know I will not bash you if you like a movie. Maybe make fun of you. A little teasing. Little teasing is always good, especially when you're, talking about movies and you have differing opinions than, your friends or your acquaintances that you make, or here in the podcast space. But I will never fault anybody for liking a movie that I did not like. That's not me. That's not what I do. That's not what this podcast is about. But Strangers Chapter 2, I can't do it. Like, if you say you like this movie, I'm going to judge you a little bit. And knowing how bad this movie is, it has knocked I Know What You Did Last Summer out of the running for my worst movie of the year. It's that bad, guys. The dialogue, which there isn't a ton of in this movie, feels very wooden at times. Madeline Pecci, I think that's how you pronounce her last name. I apologize. Her character, Maya, has a gash on her forehead that magically disappears and reappears at various parts of the movie. And I think that may be like a reshoot thing, because I know they shot all 3 of these movies back to back to back, and they went back and reshot some of this after the reception of the first movie. So maybe that is a result of reshoots and stuff. But yeah, that gash, if you pay really close attention, and it's really hard not to, not see it, because it's a gash on her forehead, and it disappears, it opens up, it gets smaller, it gets big. It's like really big at one point, like ridiculously big, and then it's like not there, or like really small the next. Yeah, whatever. I hated it. I hated it. I hate that I noticed it, and it wasn't like far into the movie. It was like probably halfway through the movie where I realized that that forehead gash is just changing every scene. But I will give the movie credit for this. They do put Maya through the ringer, and throughout the movie, she is in constant pain. She is wincing in pain. She has, wounds that she suffered from in the first movie that she's still recovering from. She has wounds that she gets in this movie that she's still recovering from by the end. So I will give them credit for that. Not so much with The Strangers, because Maya actually stabs one of the strangers with, I think it's a pitchfork or something else. But she stabs one of them. And I think this is, again, another result of probable reshoots, because she stabbed her pretty good. And for the rest of the movie, the stranger doesn't even acknowledge that they got stabbed. They're not limping at all. So I think it may be just like a reshoot thing. But yeah, it's not good. There's also like timing things in the movie, like especially in the end. There's like a timing thing where it doesn't feel like that much time has passed. Like there's one character that you see and literally probably just like a few minutes pass, and there's no way that certain character ends up in the position and in the event, let's just say. One of the characters dies. One of the characters that Maya comes across dies within like minutes of seeing her last time. Like there was no way she got from point A to point B without some sort of struggle, without anything going on that Maya would notice or that we, the audience, would notice in some way, shape, or form. It's just a timing thing. And then they tried to explain. I think this is the biggest sin, one of the biggest sins in this movie. This movie has a lot of sins. But one of the biggest things about this movie is that it tries to explain who Tamara is. We don't need to know who Tamara is. We don't. That's what made that movie, again, the original Strangers, 2008, so effective. Because they could have just made up the name. But they didn't. They tried to explain who Tamara is. And the explanation is just, it's fine. But we didn't need it. It's just so unnecessary. It really is just completely unnecessary to find out. These people just could be random psychos. But I think they're trying to like explore more about who they are. And like, we don't need that. Yeah, we don't need it. And then the ending credits, throughout the credits of the movie, we're getting a glimpse, kind of a teaser, really, for Strangers Chapter 3. And it's just, a teaser doesn't make any sense. Because, like, there's certain shots of, like, I don't know, it doesn't make any sense. It's not good. It's not. And the shittiest part about this is that I am going to go watch Chapter 3 because I can't help myself when it comes out. But, yeah, don't watch Strangers Chapter 2. If you're at all interested in watching these new Strangers movies, don't do it. Unless you have, like, friends that, like, will make fun of anything you guys watch. Like, if you guys want to, like, sit down and, like, make fun of movies, these are the perfect movies to make fun of. Because you're not going to like them, but you're going to enjoy making fun of them. That's what these movies are. And then there's, oh my God, there was a scene in the movie that everyone was talking about before it came out. And everyone was like, you will know what scene we're talking about when it gets there. And there's no reason for that scene to be in there. And it's true. I was waiting for the scene. I was like, what scene is this? And then it hits. And you're just like, oh my God, why did they go there? There is absolutely no reason for them to do this. This is so batshit insane. This has to be a reshoot. Because they're like, we need something else so ridiculous it's going to catch the audience off guard. There's catching the audience off guard, and then there's catching the audience off guard with something that makes absolutely zero fucking sense. And that is what this scene is. It just, oh my God. And then they do like a flashback for it. It's so stupid. I'm gonna stop talking about it. I'm getting heated up. I'm getting heated up, and I don't want to do that. Yeah, Strangers Chapter 2, not good. All right, these next bit of movies are if you've listened to me long enough, you know that I created a new category for the end of the year, and I've brought it here to this particular episode, or these episodes, called The Undetermined. And The Undetermined are movies where I have a very mixed feeling about, but most of that mixed feeling is very good. I just don't know if I feel strongly enough to put them in an honorable mention category or my favorite category. Definitely not necessarily the worst / disappointment / least liked category. So I made a new category, Undetermined, basically just a way to pad out my end of the year lists. And now these episodes. So I'm going to start off with the first Undetermined movie, horror movie, of course, that came out this year so far, and that is The Monkey. If Final Destination leaned more into the humor of everything, more than it does, because let's face it, some of the Final Destination kills can be a little ridiculous, it would be The Monkey. The Monkey is definitely the Final Destination if it was a little bit more of a black comedy feel. This movie is so outrightly ridiculous. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and even when it does, it feels right and not forced, but it still remains funny too. It's a very weird movie, and weird in concept, weird in how it approaches what it's doing, but still somehow able to make it enjoyable while you watch it. I think the tonal whiplash, though, of some scenes will deter or did deter people while watching it. And it does bounce around in tone a little bit too much, which does make the movie feel very uneven. And even in the kind of more serious moments, especially later on, when we kind of almost have a I don't want to say happy ending, because this movie doesn't end on a happy note. And I don't think it would have ended on a happy note. I think that's not what the movie is. But when it's trying to do that, when it's trying to try to have kind of a serious, happy moment, it just can't help itself. And it goes for a little bit of a, not necessarily a joke, but more of a, because it's a running gag that happens in the movie. Or it happens with these two, it follows the two characters of Theo James. Two Theo James. We get Theo James playing twins in this movie. But there's a moment in there that it's like, you didn't have to do that. Like, it could have just been like a serious moment, and you just left it in there for, again, it's a gag. But still, I don't know. That was just me. I think by the end of the year, this will definitely be on some list. And right now, I'm fine putting it here on the Undetermined, because I definitely need to watch it again and probably get another full grip on it. And I think that will probably be the determining factor upon rewatch of what happens with this. The next movie, The Gorge, a romance, horror, action thriller. That is what The Gorge is. And I know what you're thinking if you have not seen it, or if you hear people talk about it, labeling it like that is pretty much what The Gorge is. I have said my feelings on The Gorge on the podcast. I did an episode on it. I did it with Captain America Brave New World. But I will say the romance and horror here are great. Tonally, it does feel like a mixed bag, because it is, again, an action thriller. And then it kind of goes to horror for a little bit, and then it goes to the romance, and it kind of flip-flops back and forth until it finally decides to bring all of it together and make it all one thing. But by then, I think it's viewer kind of discretion on how you feel, how it balanced all of that together. But for everyone involved here in front of the camera, Anya Taylor-Joy, Miles Teller, they are great. They are good in the roles that they're playing. Scott Derrickson, who directed Sinister and The Black Phone, Doctor Strange, the first one, his direction is always on point. And it was here. The imagery in this movie is horrifying, which is why I say the horror stuff works really well here. And when you have Derrickson in charge of directing, and you have C. Robert Cargill, both of which did Sinister and Doctor Strange as well, it's in good hands, right? Like, you see if you see Scott Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill's name on something, you're in for a good horror, suspenseful ride. Just like if you see James Wan attached to something in horror, it's going to be good. So The Gorge is a mixed bag. I can admit that, as a lot of the stuff that I did, like there's a image in here that is stuck with me even to this day, and it is a spider with a skeleton head, and how it's used in the movie is just outrightly terrifying. Like, no doubt about it, it is outrightly terrifying. So The Gorge doesn't hit on all cylinders, but I enjoyed it when I was watching it, for sure. All right, let's talk about it. Weapons. Zach Krieger back behind the camera after giving us Barbarian, and just like his last movie, Weapons split down the middle, from people saying it's really good, others saying it's not good, some asking what is Weapons really about, some saying it doesn't have to be about anything, to some saying it's so obvious I can't believe people don't get it. Wherever you fall in the discussion of Weapons, one thing is for sure, you're talking about it. I'm talking about it, and to be completely honest, I have to watch it again. I really do. I have to watch it again to get a really good grasp of whether how I feel about this movie. I admittedly have only watched it once, and it is definitely a movie I need to watch again. I will say this, I didn't dislike the movie. I had a good time watching it. I had a pretty good crowd watching it, so I think maybe that played a little bit into my experience and how I feel about the movie. I really didn't feel the length of the movie that much. I will say that when I first watched it, I did notice some pacing issues here and there, but for the most part, I can say that I did enjoy Weapons. Is it my favorite movie of the year? No, it's not. Is it going to be at the end of the year list? I don't know. I have to really decide that once I watch it again. I thought the performances were really well done by everyone involved. Julia Gardner, Josh Brolin, who has probably one of the best line deliveries in the movie. Benedict Wong, Alden Ehrenreich, who is very, very good here. Austin Abrams, who got a big laugh a lot in my theater. Probably, if you ask people who was their favorite character walking out of that screening of mine, it would probably be Austin Abrams. Carrie Christopher as Alex, the little boy who we follow throughout the movie. Very, very good, very great young actor. I think this is also his first thing. There's a lot of first timers this year. He is one of those. And of course, Amy Madigan, Amy Madigan, almost unrecognizable as Aunt Gladys, our villain, if you will. Everyone talks about how this movie is good, even great, until the final act. And that's really where everyone really has their problems. It's the final act of the movie. I don't know where else it could have gone in terms of like story-wise and how we got to that point. It definitely didn't go where I thought it was going to go. And after so much building up to everything and how tense the movie was and how it just racks up that tension a lot of the time. Obviously, one of those is the scene where Alex's mother comes out of her house. And everyone talks about that one. That got a really big reaction in my theater, and it seems like it got a big reaction in everybody's theater. For it to end the way that it did, with that scene's everywhere on the timeline, so I don't think you can avoid it that much. But seeing Aunt Gladys run around, everything that this movie had built up, all that tension, it's still there in that scene, her running away from these kids who obviously she took over, and they're all getting their revenge whether they know it or not. And just having it be this comedic view, but also a comeuppance and karma and realization of what happens when your monster turns against you in that regard. I think it was a good release also for us. It's like all this tension building, like what's gonna happen, and then you end it on a very horrifying note, very bloody note, but in a comedic way as well. And I think that's Zach Cregan obviously comes from a very comedic background with the Whitest Kids that troupe that he was a part of before he did Barbarian as well. And Barbarian in itself also very big, tension filled, and then you have that break in the middle when Justin Long's character gets introduced, and then it goes back to the horrifying, oh my God, what's going to happen next kind of thing. So I have to watch it again, but I definitely wouldn't call Weapons a disappointment or a bad movie. I know a lot of people are calling it a disappointment. I know a lot of people have their problems with it, but it's definitely not for everyone, just like Barbarian. But you can say that for any movie, but obviously this is a horror podcast we're talking about. But for Weapons itself, I think it is really, really good. And I do think that final act, I don't know where else it could have gone for me personally. So I did really enjoy what we were watching. I don't think that third act is that bad. Because again, I don't know, what else you could have done, but I really did like it. I think Zach Cregan is building himself a nice resume for fans and everybody, and I think his next project is an original, is in his own, but I think he's earned enough where his name pops up on screen, his movies pop up on screen, everyone's going to be like, okay, I got to see what this guy does next. And I think that is the most important thing that he can do for his name, especially this early in his career. Okay, let's get to the big ones. Let's get to the highlights. of the year. I'm going to start off with a movie that came out at the beginning of the year, and that is a movie that I hope will appear on everyone's end of the year list when they watch it. And I think it works on a lot of levels. Even if you didn't like the movie, I think if you break the movie down to storytelling and movie making, you can't deny there's a solid filmmaking all around, and that movie is Companion. It's one of those movies, and I feel like this has become something of a term that we've been using a lot lately. And it could be really good or bad. It could be beneficial. It can really hurt the film in a lot of perspectives. But I think for Companion, I think it does work because it's one of those movies that is better going in either completely blind or knowing very little about it. And even knowing the bare minimum, even knowing the twist for this movie, which the trailers gave away. Not entirely. They gave away one of the twists of the movie. There's more twists in the movie. But giving away one of the twists, the main twist, basically, of what Sophie Thatcher's character is, it is still seeing that journey play out. Seeing the story play out the way it does. It is a wild, wild ride. Sophie Thatcher was killing it right now. She's just one of those great people that we can't wait to see more of in the future. As Iris, she's great here. Jack Quaid plays a character so well that even though you know he's a piece of garbage and you can see why he thinks the way he does, it doesn't make him right or or anything like that. But at least you understand it. Coming from his character, you kind of understand, especially the way the world is today. And again, now making him, relatable or not necessarily not relatable. That's not the right word. Making him a good character, making him, a solid guy. But you understand why he is doing what he's doing. And the movie doesn't take the preachy way. It could have easily gone that way, but it doesn't. And I'm glad it doesn't. And Quaid handles it so well as well. And it makes his character just work. That's what I'm trying to say. It makes his character work on every level. The supporting cast is great too. I don't know why I didn't put their names down, but they are also very good here. It is one of those movies where it also probably benefited from seeing it with a crowd, because my crowd on a Saturday morning that was probably less than half filled the auditorium, and it was in one of the big screens. I think might have been the IMAX screening. It was half filled. Everybody was just enthralled by it, as we should have been, because it is a very good movie. So Companion is a movie that just works on a lot of levels. Like I said, if you break it down, even if you don't like the movie, I think if you break it down on like a film level perspective and story perspective, it just works. It works so well. And the second rewatch, you can just catch all these little things and conversations that are just so different. I can tell you right now, wholeheartedly, The Companion will be on my end of the year list, and it definitely will be on either, at the very minimum, an honorable mention, for sure. This is one of those movies that I have watched twice now this year, and there's not a lot of movies that I've watched twice this year, and this is one of them, and for good reason. And I might even watch it again before the end of the year, just so I can, fully grasp it and enjoy it again before putting that list out. Okay, on the next movie, Hard Eyes. This is a complete surprise to me. This is one of my surprises of the year. I'm just going to admit it right now. So when you hear it again at the end of the year, you shouldn't be surprised, because this is one of my complete surprises. I did not expect a damn thing from Hard Eyes. I thought it was going to be another by-the-numbers slasher that probably would be forgettable by the time I got home. But man, I had so much fun watching Hard Eyes. This is another romance horror. You got Mason Gooding from Scream. He's one of the core four. You got Olivia Holt in here. She was a former Disney actress, now doing other stuff as well. Obviously, they play not a couple. They're not in a relationship, but the two are getting hunted down by the Hard Eyes killer, who kills couples on Valentine's Day. And what did you know it? The day this movie, pretty much the whole day this movie is set on, is on Valentine's Day. Gooding and Holt, their chemistry works really well. And I think it's what makes the movie work on all fronts, the romance side and the horror side. The look of Hard Eyes, like the actual killer, is pretty cool. There's some pretty gnarly kills in this movie. The movie starts off with a very gnarly kill that I didn't know what was going to happen. And then when it happens, you're like, oh, okay. I guess that's what we're going to have to expect in this movie. And there are some gnarly kills in here. But it immediately puts you in the mood for this movie. Hard Eyes is definitely, like I mentioned, one of my surprises of the year. If I expected a little bit more from Hard Eyes, it probably would have just gone into my favorites list. But I, again, didn't expect anything. I did like it. Just because a movie's on my surprise movies of the year doesn't mean it's not one of my favorites. But this is really good. I highly recommend it. It's a good date movie, too. So if your date likes horror movies, or she can at least, or he, at least handle a little bit of horror, this is great. Because the romance, like I said, the romance stuff works really, really well. It's like it's a romance movie. It just happens to have a serial killer in it, which I think is great. The next movie, Predator, Killer of Killers. Dan Trachtenberg is the man. He gave the Predator franchise a shot in the arm that it needed with Prey, and now he's back with not one, but 2 new Predator movies. He made one of them, of course, is this, which premiered on Hulu, and of course he has Predator Killer of Killers. He also had Predator Badlands coming out later this year, which we'll get to in a little bit. But Killer of Killers, it's an animated anthology following 3 different eras and kinds of warriors that deal with the Yuja. I think that's how you pronounce it. I forgot how to pronounce it. I used to be able to pronounce it really well. I don't think that's how you pronounce it. Which is the name that is finally acknowledged for the Predators. That's what the Predator race is called. We had the Viking era story, which followed a vengeful Ursa who is looking to find her father's murderer with her son and loyal soldiers, only to have to fight against the Predator. There's the feudal Japan story, which follows 2 brothers who choose different paths and then reunite, and then, yep, you guessed it, have to fight a Predator to survive. And the final story, or at least the final story in this kind of anthology, there's technically 4 stories in here, but the final kind of story that we see here is set during World War II and follows Torres, a young man trying to prove himself on being a pilot, and has to step up when he figures out that there is something else in the sky with them. And yes, you guessed it, that thing, a Predator. That's the basic gist of what the movie is. There's a little bit more, like I mentioned, there's another kind of 4th story in there that kind of brings everything together. And if you're a fan of the Predator universe, or just have an idea on it, I highly recommend this for you. The animation is pretty good, it was made using the Unreal Engine and the Third Floor Animation House. It's a company that's done a lot of big projects: House of the Dragons, Game of Thrones itself, Godzilla, Kong the New Empire, and a lot of Marvel and Star Wars stuff as well. Because the guys that created the company worked for Lucasfilm and started doing what they were doing during Episode 3. Which I think is pretty cool. And they've just been been at it, and then they're just one of the big, animation houses out there. Anyway, back to the movie itself. I really liked it. I think it would have been cool to see some of this stuff in live action. Like, I think, after seeing Prey, I would have definitely loved to see kind of a feudal Japan story set. I think that was one of the things that I think a lot of people wanted, because everyone's like, okay, we got, the old-timey, I don't want to say Western kind of feel with Prey. A lot of people wanted the Viking story, or not the Viking. The Viking story actually ended up being good, but a lot of people wanted the Japan story to be told in live action, and we get to see it here, and it's still good. And a majority of the Japan story is nonverbal. A lot of it is just visual, which I think is awesome. I think it's great. But what they were able to get away with on the animation side here for the movie was so good. There's just a lot to grasp onto, and I think Trachtenberg is just so good here. Give him everything that he needs for the Predator franchise, because he's on point. He has it. He knows how to handle these characters in this world, and I'm not one of those guys that wants to lock a director in on something for a while, but he obviously enjoys doing this and he loves it. And if I were 20th Century Studios, I'd be like, you can do it for as long as you want, dude, because if you keep putting out stuff like this, you're golden. All right, the next movie we're going to talk about, we talked about a little bit, sort of, suitably, that's not a word, with the monkey, Final Destination. Next movie is Final Destination Bloodlines. Who knew that after running for as long as it has, the Final Destination movies still got some juice? Because let me tell you, Final Destination Bloodlines is a hell of a lot of fun. Like, a lot of fun. This is another movie where I was like, okay, I kind of know what to expect. I didn't really like the last 2 Final Destination movies, but man, this is a lot of fun. This was a hell of a lot of fun. The movie follows a family, of course, getting killed one by one after death itself comes after this particular family that I don't know if I want to spoil that part. There's a connection to actually I think they spoil it in the trailers. So the family has a connection to death. The family was supposed to die. There was someone who was supposed to die in the family that didn't die. They survived, and now death is coming for them. Why, I will not say, but you have to watch the movie for that one. But it's still pretty good. And it's not like, and it's also, I think one of the reasons for it is because it was actually written so well. And I forgot to say the team for this movie, but I think they did announce a sequel, and I think one of them is coming back to write the movie, which I'm glad, because they had such a great handle on it, and they didn't take themselves too seriously. They actually made fun of the concept, but they made it fun in the concept that makes sense, where it's like you're not insulting the audience or the movie itself. You're insulting the idea that death is this just omnipresent, like a gust of wind that just knocks something out of place and it starts a chain reaction. Just the way they do it is just it makes sense, and it's so funny that they do it. And the fact that no one has ever done that before, I think, is ridiculous. But there you go. But these characters, the characters in the movie, you kind of don't want to see any of them die. They do such a good job of making you care for this family. Like, you don't want to see any of them go, but they have to go, because then you have no movie. The deaths in this movie are very creative. A lot of them are super gruesome. There is one, actually there's a few of them really that just stick out so well. And I almost don't want to give them away, because if you haven't watched it, if you're a holdout on it and you want to watch this movie, I don't want to, say what those deaths are. I will say one of them is in a hospital, and after watching this movie, I had a recent trip to the emergency room, and I had to go through. I will say one of them involves an X-ray machine. Although it's not, it's an X-ray machine, and I had to go through an X-ray machine. And I will tell you right now, the slightest thought of what happens in that scene went in my head when I went through that machine, and it was not fun. I'll tell you that right now. Obviously, for fans of the series and horror fans in general, we get to see Tony Todd. Tony Todd, one last time on the big screen. It's one scene, like usual, because he's only really in one scene for the whole series. But knowing what we knew, that he was sick for a little while, and this was the last movie role that he completed, the scene itself is really touching, and it's a touching send-off to not only his character, but to Tony Todd himself. That was really cool, and to know that it was sort of improvised. The directors that told him, just, talk to the audience, say what you want to say, talk to the audience, talk to the characters, but it's like you're also talking to the audience. And they just let him do his thing, and it was such a touching way, and it just makes the scene so much more, better, and I loved it. So besides Tony Todd, there are some nice callbacks. One particular death that I don't, if it was any other movie, I don't think you could get away with it. But because it's this movie, it got away with it. And it was one of the most totally justified death scenes in the movie. It was also a death scene that my entire audience was cheering for when it happened. The loud gasp that happened in that theater, and then the slow applause was perfect. I'm make another one with this team, because I think Final Destination is just one of those movies that it could, if you do them well and they work, the audience will line up and they will come. I think this is a good kind of, way to bring the audience back, because this was really, really good. So if you haven't watched it yet and you're kind of on the fence, if my word means anything, please go give it a shot. It's really, really good. All right, let's move on to the next movie. Black Phone 2. Scott Derrickson, C. Robert Cargill reunite for Black Phone 2, expanding the short story by Joe Hill from the first movie. Obviously, they come back. That's what the movie's based off. They did do some changes to that first movie, so they kind of tried to expand a little bit on that. Here for the sequel, we got our main players back, but the focus really is more on Madeline McGraw's Gwen in this movie, whose powers/dreams become very much a vocal point of the story of the film. Mason Thames's Flynn is still very important as well. He has a very heavy scene that felt very real, and what someone who went through the experience he did would probably have that scene. So that's a very effective scene. It also involves her father in that scene as well. So I think that was pretty cool. Ethan Hawke returns as the Grabber, now in fully Freddy Krueger-like, which sounds ridiculous, right? It's like, you're going to make the Grabber Freddy Krueger? What? But somehow Cargill, Derrickson were able to execute it, and they made it work. And Hawke just seems more dangerous and menacing this time around, which they do explain. Like, he has these moments where he's like monologuing to Gwen and to Finn about why he's back and how he's changed and just how more vicious he can be, and they show that, and they show that very much. And we get a little bit of backstory on who the Grabber is. Not too much, where it's like, okay, we don't need to know everything about this guy, but we get just enough to be like, okay, that's who he was before we saw him in the first movie. Great. And then we get a little bit more backstory, which is a little bit of a push. And that might be make it or break it for some people, but I think it's convenient. Let's put it that way. People will complain about it being too convenient, and I can't argue against that. But on top, with the horror and the grisly, surprising gore we get, this movie is also very much an emotional movie. I won't spoil why, but it really hits home, and it's not a cheap emotion either. It's not like, oh, we're trying to get just a cheap, reaction from you guys. Like, it is really deep down emotional of what this movie is, and it's earned. It very much is earned, at least for me, in my opinion. It feels very earned. And Derrickson is working on another level here. When we get the visions, dreams, if you will, as opposed to the real world, they did this very quick and very satisfying transition between them. And I first noticed, and you can notice it very much on the attack on Gwen in the cabin. I think that was one of the scenes they actually released. But you can notice that very much when Gwen gets attacked for the first time. That transition from like the dream sequence to the real world. And I thought it was very effective. It's so small, so simple, but so effective. And he just does these sweeping shots every now and then in the movie that are really cool. We also get this scene where Gwen and Finn are telling people around the camp, people that are there, because obviously they go to this new camp, what's going on, and it acts kind of as a connective tissue between their characters and the characters that work at the camp as well. And in that scene, we have Damian Bashir, who I didn't know was in this movie at all. And they do a very good job of not showing him in the trailers, but he is in this movie. He plays a supporting role in this role, and he gets his moment to shine. And just the way it's like almost watching like a play a little bit, because they're like sitting in a mess hall, and there's like a little like stage there, and he gets on top of the stage explaining kind of the story, and the camera kind of just like dollies in, and you kind of have Gwen and Finn sitting down, and you kind of you get that view from behind them, and the camera dollies in, and I don't know, it's just like, it is like such simple filmmaking and camera work, but I don't know, just like, I didn't expect it from a movie like this, I guess. It's just really, really good. It was really cool to watch. I will say it does start off a little slow, and there may be some things that were cut because, there's another character in the movie called Mustang. Yes, her name is Mustang, played by Ariana Riveras. She also works at the camp with Damian Bashir. And there may be a little something between Mustang and Finn that probably got cut somewhere along the way, because it kind of looks like, oh, like there maybe there'll be a thing, and then like nothing, just like flat out nothing between them, and then it's mentioned by the dad later. So like, I think maybe there was something there, and they just cut it for time to make it very much more Gwen's story as well, because like I said, Madeline McGraw definitely the lead in this movie, if not very much shares that lead role with Mason Thames's Finn. But that the pace picks up so much when the Grabber finally comes in, because once the Grabber comes in, it is just full steam to the finish. Like, it does not slow down once he is there. Like, it is a constant go, and it never stops until the end, which I very much enjoyed. So I really enjoyed this. I mentioned on socials, it's just a whole new animal, and it works. There was, of course, a running gag online that this is the best unofficial remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street. And I would kind of agree, but it is also very much its own thing, which is also very good. So, next movie we want to talk about, 28 years later, Danny Boyle and Alex Garland are finally back to bring us more of the rage virus action, or so everyone thought. Instead, we got a very great mix of many things: a coming-of-age movie, dealing with trauma and loss, isolationism, and probably other things that I didn't catch or caught after the fact. I've forgotten about. But Boyle and Garland could have chosen the easy route and done a straight-up zombie action movie with some drama. But that's not who they are. And that's not what they did with 28 Days Later. And they wanted to bring a little bit more about that now with, bigger crew. Now that the virus is out there even more, it gets a chance to evolve. This is very much a straight sequel to 28 Days Later. It does somewhat acknowledge 28 weeks later in its own way, but this very much is a sequel to 28 Days Later, which is why it is very much their blueprint and their DNA, and it feels more like a sequel to that. Because if you just watch 28 Weeks Later before you watch this, I think you won't get kind of that nuance, because 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later are two very different movies. But this feels very much more akin to days than to weeks. Yes, that final act of the movie was, though, much more action-based, but with the exception of, the very dramatic things that happened in that thanks to Jodie Comer and Ralph Fiennes. But yeah, everything about this movie is straight up drama. The trailers kind of gave it kind of that action horror feel, but again, 28 Days Later it had action in it. It built up to this loud action piece in the mansion, but it is very much a story about people surviving and a drama, and that is what 28 Years Later is as well. And credit to the cast on here. Alfie Williams, I think this is his first movie, plays pretty much our lead in this movie, and he does a very great job. Holds his own with Jodie Comer, who is fantastic in this, fantastic in everything that she does, really. And that final scene that they have, man, I was not expecting that. I don't think anybody was expecting that. No one was expecting that. And that is what we got. And credit to all of them for doing that. It is so good in its own regard. And I don't want to spoil that part, because if you haven't seen it yet, it's really good. And on top of all that, this movie is also very beautiful to look at. The cinematography is amazing here. It's top tier. There are gorgeous shots here, then juxtaposed to all the blood and gore that we get. And then you have the experimental feel that Boyle was known for, especially in those early days of his career. The action shots and that crazy iPhone camera rig that they posted a picture of when the movie came out, that everyone's talking about online. And it's really, really cool how they use it in the movie. It is very jarring at first. It's like, oh my God, what the hell is that? But then they kept using it, and it's like the way he uses it, it seems very cool, and it's different. And I think that's why we liked it so much, because it was very different. I know people have been saying, and still have been saying, that this movie is a disappointment. To each their own. I can see the faults in it. I can see that you were expecting a horror, action thriller because of the trailers. But again, if you remember how 28 Days Later was, it wasn't a big action movie. It became a big action movie. But the majority of that movie was drama. It was about people surviving and getting to know each other and starting over. And this does it even more, but it does it through the eyes of a kid. So he is very much coming of age in his own right, because he's going through the coming of age, right that this colony has, so that has closed himself off to the world, even more so than England being shut off from the rest of the world as well, or the UK rather. So I very much ended up liking this. I did end up liking it a little bit more than I thought I would, but it's very, very good. If you have not watched it yet, I highly recommend you go check that out. Let's talk about the next movie, Bring Her Back. The Philippou brothers are back after directing Talk to Me. They have now directed Bring Her Back, and this was equally as divisive as Talk to Me when it came out. Although, again, what I'm seeing at least has been mostly positive. kind of just like Talk to Me was as well. I think for the most part, for me, again, a lot of it is positive. I think the main thing is that the cast is great, and obviously everyone is championing Sally Hawkes. Sally Hawkes good in everything that she does, because she is great here as well. I think it's a performance that slowly starts to unravel, that by the end of the movie, she looks and feels like a completely different character. Like, if you really look at her and follow her, and it's something that I noticed on that, even the very first watch, she looks so much different from when we first see her to when we last see her. Like, you see the journey that she goes through. She has this very colorful and lively persona, and what is there is a broken and sad and devoid of any sort of color mother who is grieving and willing to do anything to get her daughter back, whatever the cost is, to anyone around her. I will say that this movie is very heavy. I do want to mention the lead actress's name, the little girl's name, and I totally forgot to put her down in my notes here, but credit to her as well, because she is so good in this too, especially in those last moments, or that final act, I should say. She's really good in it too. I will say that this movie is heavy, emphasis on the heavy, and I feel like that heaviness might push some people away, but I think it's one of the things that keeps the conversation on which is going to be a better movie, this one or Talk to Me, because that conversation obviously happened when the movie came out. I will say that Talk to Me is probably more accessible, and because it has a better hook to get the audience in, with the hand that lets you talk to, the dead people, while Bring Her Back, it gives you at times the more supernatural, kind of demonic things. It doesn't do it until the last act of the movie, really, when that kind of really starts to play the bigger, heavier factor. The sound design in this one, I think, is better than Talk to Me, especially with a few scenes. All I will say is the kitchen scene, which I think everyone who watches this movie knows exactly what I'm talking about. But I will say Bring Her Back has a better punch of an ending than Talk to Me. The ending to Talk to Me is really good. It is good. It's like, oh, wow, okay, you just sat through that, and you just kind of had to embrace what's going on with it. But I feel like the Bring Her Back ending, because of everything that has been going on and everything that you show and the cinematography that goes behind a lot of this movie as well, I just think it's a very heavier ending. It's a more emotional gut punch of an ending than Talk to Me is. Even though the ending of Talk to Me is also a gut punch, but I feel like this one is just a bigger, like, damn, like, that is just like, it is like, you have to sit in the theater just watching the credits just to decompress a little bit. I joked on social media back then when the movie first came out that I wanted the Philippou brothers to do something more light for the next movie, because both these movies have just been so heavy and dark. Even though their movies do have light and funny moments, this one also as well. But it's just like, guys, like, come on, just like, we get it. You can do these heavy movies, but I know you can also do these more lighter movies, because I've seen your YouTube videos and those are all funny. So, but credit to them for, going out of their comfort zone and doing this stuff. I think it will be interesting to see kind of more, as more people discover it and more people give it a chance, the at-home audience, how they react to this, because this movie also got a lot of hype online before it came out, and those types of movies usually in the horror genre always seem to get the online conversation going both ways, right? I think last year the big movie that came out, they got a very big word of mouth and became very divisive amongst fans once it came out, was Longlegs. And I think a prime example of that as well, besides Longlegs, was also The Substance. That was another one. And it's still getting a lot of, talk. And I know recently, it's been getting a lot of talk recently because of John Carpenter coming out and talking about it. He can say whatever he wants. I think, him not liking it does not mean that he is a bad director all of a sudden. Like, come on, let's be real. So I like Bring Her Back. I think that ending really saved it for me, to be honest. But I really enjoyed it. So, yeah. All right, so this one isn't really a horror movie, but I want to talk about it anyway because it is kind of a thriller. It's not even horror adjacent. It's more thriller than anything. But I want to talk about it still. And that's The Long Walk. Just very briefly, because, I mean, it's horrific in its own way. The idea of it is horrific. And I just wanted to mention it here because I just want to talk about it. Honestly, I think the leads in it were great. Cooper Hoffman, David Johnson are the heart of the movie. And they are so good together. Their chemistry together is so good. The entire cast is great. Despite knowing how it ends up going, you feel for these characters. You like these characters. You are rooting for all these characters. And it makes it so much more difficult once they stop walking. I honestly want to just talk about it, but I don't know if it really fits here because I find it more thriller than horror. But it is horror adjacent. You know, we talk about the thriller movies here. It's just really good. At the end of the day, I just want you to watch this movie. Just watch it. Please watch it. I'll get more into it at the end of the year because I definitely want to rewatch it again. Because I've only watched it once, and I do want to watch it again because it is really good. It's a tough movie, and I know it's going to be a tough rewatch. It probably does feel like one of those movies where it's like you watched it, you don't want to watch it again for a few years. But I want to watch it again because it is very good. It is a tough movie to get through as well, just because of what happens and how it plays out, not because it's a bad movie. But yeah, I really liked The Long Walk. That was really good. Okay, moving on to the last movie we're going to talk about here. And if you've been paying attention at all, you know where this is going. It's Sinners. I didn't leave it here because I think it's the best horror movie of the year. I haven't sat down and really thought about that yet. But I want to put it here because we got to talk about it because it was one of the first big movies that came out. I mean, honestly, what more is there to say about Sinners that hasn't already been said? Ryan Coogler has planted his flag as one of the great directors working today. He is a full nerd when it comes to filmmaking, and it shows. You see his passion coming off the screen, and when he gets to talk about it in interviews. Sinners is jam-packed with so much culture, history, and both music and actual human history. And Coogler, put it in the form of a vampire movie. His villain, played wonderfully by Jack O'Connell in Remick, is an Irish vampire that has easily been alive for years, and he's not killing for food. Obviously, yeah, he's killing for food probably, but that's not his main reason. He is looking for something. And when he finds Sammy, played wonderfully by Miles Canton, in his first movie role as well, he just oozes talent, really. He finds Sammy, and when he punctures the veil, you get that great wonder. When you get the past and future surrounding the juke joint, Remick sees Sammy's gift, and that's all he wants. He doesn't care about Sammy's skin color. He doesn't care about these other people. He just wants Sammy because he wants to see his people again, because he's been away from them for so long. It's just unfortunate that Sammy has to become a vampire for Remick to get that. He actually, at a certain point, he's like, I hate to do it to you, kid, but I need your power. And everybody here is great. Obviously, Michael B. Jordan being the actual lead. We talk about Remick, and we talk about Jack O'Connell and Miles Canton, but Michael B. Jordan, he pulling double duty, Smoke and Stack, playing them completely different. And that you sometimes forget it's the same guy because they're just such different characters. Delroy Lindo as Slim, that scene in the car, just so fantastic that almost got cut from the movie. And Delroy Lindo had to, talk to Coogler and be like, "Do not cut this. This is his scene. This is Slim's pinnacle scene in the movie. Do not cut this." And I'm glad they didn't cut it. Omar Benson Miller as Cornbread plays for the comedic relief. I'm going to mispronounce her last name, and I always mispronounce it. I always don't know how to say it, and then when I see it in front of me, it's like, nope, it's gone. Wunmi Mosaku, I think, again, I'm so sorry. But her Annie, making every woman jealous in the theater, probably, because of the scene she has with Michael B. Jordan. But her character is really good, and it's heartbreaking. Just the connection that she has with Smoke is incredible. Ling Jun Lee as Grace, I know I got a lot of flack for what her character does in the movie. But I'm happy that people were having a conversation about it, about her choice to let the vampires, do what they do, because they saw both sides of it. So I'm happy that, it didn't become the typical let's attack her because of a decision she made in a movie, her fictional character she's playing. So I thought that was really great, because people forget about that sometimes. But yeah, Sinners is so good. It's so good. The music, the songs, the score by Ludwig Göransson, who has done the score for every Coogler project that has come out. They're obviously best friends. I think they were roommates at some point. But they do such an amazing... This movie is just so good. Again, I don't know what more I can say about Sinners that hasn't already been said. Other than, if you haven't watched it yet, the fuck are you doing? Go watch it. Seriously, it's one of the best movies of the year. Please, go watch that movie. It is... Go. Regardless of whatever genre you want to put it in, it is one of the best movies of the year. All right. That's it. That is all the horror movies that I watched this year that I want to talk about. Not that I want to talk about, because I would not want to talk about Strangers Chapter 2. But those are all the movies. There's a helicopter above my house for some reason. But, I'm distracted now. I'm not going to edit this out because this podcast is way too long. But I want to thank you guys for listening. But the horror is not over. Obviously, there's the horror hangover. We still got some horror movies coming out for the rest of the year. Predator Badlands, which is obviously going to be a mix of horror and action, coming out on November 7th. Not a horror movie, not even horror adjacent. I guess maybe horror adjacent because it is a little bit on the gothic side, if you want to call it that. Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, which I have seen, and I really, 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 really liked it. So if you haven't watched it yet, if you get a chance to watch it in theater, and if it's still out in theaters by the time I upload this, go watch it in the theater. If not, do check it out on Netflix. November 7th, that's also when Predator Badlands comes out. Oz Perkins, his new movie Keeper, comes out on November 14th. I don't know why it's coming out in November. October didn't really have a big horror movie. You could have just put it in there. But Oz Perkins Keeper is coming out. It's getting some pretty decent word of mouth so far for people that have seen it. So go check that out if you're a fan of Osgood Perkins as well. Of course, Longlegs, The Monkey, this is his new one. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 comes out on December 5th. If you're excited for that. And then the reboot, remake, reimagining, whatever they're calling it, for Silent Night, Deadly Night is coming out also on December 12th as well. I think that's getting a limited release. It keeps flip-flopping between limited release and wide release, but we'll just say it's getting a limited release on December 12th. I usually do a preview, do some of the big ones that are coming out next year for 2026 that we'll obviously talk about on this podcast, unless, again, something changes and some of these get moved around. Soulmate, which is supposed to be a Megan spinoff. I don't know if that's still coming out, but that is still on the January docket. 28 years later, The Bone Temple is coming out, directed by Nia DaCosta. Return to Silent Hill, also coming out in January. And I don't think this is a horror movie. I think it's going to be horror adjacent. But Send Help, the new movie by Sam Raimi, I think it's going to be pretty cool. That's all in January. February, we have Scream 7 coming out. March, The Bride, the new movie, the new take on The Bride of Frankenstein, directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal. I don't think that's horror. It might be horror adjacent in the end of the day, but we'll put it on here anyway because it is about The Bride of Frankenstein. In April, we have the new Mummy movie directed by Lee Corrin, who directed Evil Dead Rise. That will come out in April, as will the sequel to Ready or Not, called Ready or Not, Here I Come. You got Samara Weaving coming back. Then you have Catherine Newton in there as well. I think that's going to be pretty cool. July, that's right, that's a big ass jump for horror from April to July. July, you have Shiver. I think that's still on the docket. That's going to be the new movie by Tommy Wirkola, who directed Dead Snow and Violent Night. It's supposed to be a shark movie. And then you have the new Evil Dead movie, Evil Dead Burn, which finished production not too long ago, and that will come out in July. In August, you have Insidious Red Tail. It is a new Insidious movie coming out. I don't know. I don't know if it's a spin-off or if it's a continuation of the main Insidious movies, but you have that coming out. In September, you have Clayface, which may be horror adjacent again. It's still on the docket for September. I know they're filming right now, but there was some back and forth on whether or not the movie is going to come out next year or not, but it's still on the docket for September, so we'll leave it on there. Also in September, Zach Cregan's new movie, Resident Evil. Of course, he did Barbarian, he did Weapons, came out this year as well, which we talked about earlier. He has Resident Evil coming out. I don't know how it's going to go because a lot of the hardcore is not happy with what he said, but we'll see what happens with that. Then in October, we have Remain, which is the new M. Night Shyamalan movie. That might be horror adjacent. I know I think it's supposed to be like a romance thriller, if I remember correctly. If I read the logline right, I don't know, but we'll find out about that. And then in December, I don't know. Again, this one's kind of flip-flopping between if it's going to be in the docket or not. Robert Eggers' new movie after Nosferatu, from vampires, he's going to werewolves. That's right, werewolf. Not spelled the traditional way you do, WERWULF. So we'll see what happens with that as well. Of course, that's just the ones that are out and about right now. It could also always change somewhere down the line, release schedule-wise, and docket's always getting moved around, so we'll see. So that's it, everybody. Let me know what your thoughts on the horror and horror-adjacent movies were this year. Did it beat out last year? Was it a letdown? Was it better than we thought? Was it just okay? Let me know on the social media. Links are down below for that. If you're listening on YouTube, you can just tell me right there in the comment section. That said, obviously go check out all the other links where you can find the podcast. Follow on social media and all that good stuff. Subscribe, follow, leave a rating, all that good stuff. I said that already, but I'm saying it again. I hope you all had a happy Halloween, a good spooky season, and I apologize if this ends up being too long. It's a torture for you and a torture for me because I have to edit it. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. I will see you guys next time right here on the Movie Pit Podcast. And as always, go watch some movies.
Whoop whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movies!